Here's Johnny. Okay, that was terrible. All right. That was pretty embarrassing. Okay. Let's move on to the video. So I just watched The Shining again, and I kind of realized something. Every time I watch this movie, I notice something new. But this time what I noticed wasn't about the blood pouring out the elevators or those creepy twins in the hallway or even in the iconic, "Here's Johnny." Okay, never mind. All right, that was terrible. Sorry, Jack. But what I noticed was how quietly and slowly that it happens. How Jack Torrance doesn't snap overnight. He isolates himself one step at a time. And by the time he picks up that axe, isolation has done most of the work. The movie really helped me understand what I was going through. It helped me see the moment where choosing to be alone stops being about space and starts being about surrender. Because there's a really thin line between needing time for yourself and slowly disappearing into it. And I had even crossed that line without even knowing. So before I get into the movie, let me tell you guys what I was dealing with. Because at the time, I promise it didn't look like a problem. That's the trick to this kind of isolation. It really disguises itself as something reasonable. I told myself I needed space. I told myself I needed to focus. I told myself I worked better alone, thought better alone, existed better alone. And for a while, some of that was true. Stepping back gave me room to breathe. But the problem is that the room got bigger. And the bigger that it got, the more I told myself I needed it. The less I reached out and the harder it was to reach out. The fewer conversations I had and the more awkward they became when I tried. And to be honest with you guys, eventually I stopped trying. It's not like I was sitting in an empty hotel room in the mountains or anything trying to write. I had a phone, I had people I could call. I mean, in the world, we're more connected than ever. You know, I had a life I could easily step back into, but the distance had become comfortable, and not the good comfort. I'm talking about the comfort you feel when you're touching a bruise because it hurts so much, and you stop touching it, and then you tell yourself it's healing, but really you're just avoiding it. And the longer you avoid it, the more that bruise becomes the center of everything. Okay, that was a weird example, but that's the best way I can describe it. You know, you arrange your whole life around not touching the bruise, and that's where I was when I rewatched The Shining. And this movie didn't just reflect what I was going through. It showed me where it leads if you don't turn around. You know, watch how Jack enters the Overlook. He's not crazy yet. He's a guy who took a job in the middle of nowhere because he needs time to write. He needs quiet, he needs focus, he needs space. And that sounded too familiar. Kubrick doesn't show us a man who gets possessed by evil spirits on day one. That's the ending. But in the beginning, he shows us a man who slowly and deliberately removes himself from human contact. And then the hotel moves into the space that he created, the ghost. Jack doesn't write. He throws a tennis ball against the wall. He stares at a blank page for days. He sleeps in. He wanders, and every day the distance between him and his family grows a little wider. Not because of the ghost, but because of him. There's this moment early on where Wendy comes to check on him while he's working, and he snaps at her, "Can't you see that I'm working?" Okay, that's terrible impersonation number 2. Sorry again, Jack. But he's not working. He's been sitting there doing nothing for hours. The anger isn't about being interrupted. The anger is about being seen. And for him, being seen means someone might notice that the distance he's creating between him and his family isn't productive. It's just distance. And if someone notices that, then he might have to admit that the space that he needed is actually just a hiding place. And that's when it hit me. Because I've been jacking that scene. No, not the axe part or anything. Obviously, I haven't chased anyone through a frozen maze. All right, again, that wasn't funny. But the part where someone reaches out and you push them away because their presence threatens the isolation you've been carefully building. Yeah, I know that feeling. The feeling where someone caring about you feels like an intrusion instead of a gift. That's when isolation stops being about space and becomes something else. And that's where The Shining does something brilliant. That's where it really shines, no pun intended. The hotel isn't just a haunted building. It's a metaphor for what happens when you isolate yourself long enough that something else moves in. When you stop connecting with people, you don't just get emptiness. The emptiness fills up, with resentment, with paranoia, with the inability to trust, with old wounds that you've never truly dealt with. And the Overlook shows Jack exactly what he wants to see. A bar. A bartender who listens. A party full of people who tell him he's special. It gives him the version of connection that isolation craves. The kind that doesn't require honesty. The kind that doesn't challenge you. The kind that just tells you what you want to hear. And it's truly a coping mechanism, and it becomes a prison. And that's what isolation does in real life too. When you've been cut off long enough, your brain starts providing its own company. Hence the quote, "The idle mind is the devil's playground." So it's not good company, not an honest company, just company. And sometimes it can turn bad. You start having conversations with yourself that go in circles. You start believing things about people you've distanced yourself from, things that makes the distance feel justified. They don't really care. They always hated me. They wouldn't understand anyway. Or what I used to say to myself, I'm better off alone. And the isolation starts talking, and it sounds like your own voice, so you believe it. And what I realize, and I find this very interesting, is that Lloyd, the bartender, he doesn't serve Jack alcohol. You guys know what he serves him? Validation. He serves him the story that Jack wants to hear, that Wendy is the problem, that he's the victim, and that he deserves better. And unfortunately, Jack drinks it up. Because when you're isolated, any voice that tells you that you're right feels like a lifeline, even when it's drowning you. Now, how did The Shining actually help me deal with this? It didn't give me advice. It gave me a mirror. And unfortunately, what I saw in that mirror was the moment where I stopped being someone who needed space and became someone who was afraid to leave it. After I had graduated from college and I took a new job in a new city, I was alone. I didn't know anybody. I stopped talking to my friends from college. I stopped being, I had a very hard time in college. Unfortunately, I went through a lot of stuff. A lot of things happened. I left college bitter, angry, frustrated, resentful. And I remember when I had moved back home and I lived with my mom for a couple months, I still felt like I was in college because I was still seeing those same people who were my friends, or my fraternity brothers, and so on and so forth. And then I had gotten a job in another city 4 hours away, just right outside Chicago, and I just decided to take the job. And I moved to a city where I didn't know anybody, where I didn't know a thing, where I was just alone. And to be honest with you guys, I isolated myself. I didn't really talk to anyone from college or try to reach out to anybody or anything like that. I was truly just angry and resentful, and I thought I didn't need them. I thought I didn't need them. I thought I didn't need friends. I thought I didn't need connection. And even when I got to Rockford, it took me a long time to start connecting with people. I was very, very isolated. I was alone. My daily routine was the same. I went to work, went home, ate, I didn't even have a gym membership. I wasn't even working out then. I was just truly alone. I eat the same thing every day. I was just in my room, and the weekends were the worst because I didn't have work to distract myself anymore. I was just by myself, and I was just digging a hole within my own mind deeper and deeper. And I started to hear those voices talking to me, saying that you don't need them. You're better off alone. You're better off isolated. I wasn't really talking or communicating with anyone. And it was just very hard. It was a very, very hard time and it was something that I chose. I know that I didn't have ghosts haunting me or anything, but I had voices in my head. My voice, I'm not schizophrenic, I promise. I had my voice in my head telling me that I was better off alone. And unfortunately, that voice only grew louder and louder as I isolated myself. However, I got out of that. And I remember how I got out of that. I saw a group of guys playing basketball. This was like almost a year into living in this place. So the first step that I took getting out of it was I got a gym membership just so I could be around people. Yeah, I wasn't really talking or communicating with people, but I knew that I was digging myself into a hole and I needed to be around people because my isolation was becoming an addiction. And then I saw a group of guys playing basketball in this gym. And I remember after they were done playing, I had asked them about it and they said, yeah, come join us. So then eventually I started joining them. They hooped like 2 to 3 times a week, 6 a.m. in the morning, by the way. This was when I was in my early bird stage, still in my early bird stage, but it was like way early. And I started playing basketball with them and I started connecting with them. And it was hard for me to connect with them at first because I had been alone for so long and I wasn't really talking to anyone, but I had to put myself out there. And that's exactly what I did. But I just want to let you guys know it took me a year to get out of that, hole, to get out of that mental maze that I was trapping myself in. And I'm very blessed that happened because if I had never done that, I don't know where I would have been. I had been alone for so long and the days just blended into each other. Same routine, same wall, same silence, and it was just becoming insufferable. So for me to go up to those guys and ask them if I could, ask about basketball, I wanted to play basketball with them, it felt really good. And I had a really good friend from college, probably the realest friend that I have. I remember this was after I had asked about joining these guys for basketball. It's funny how the universe works, but he said, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How are you? And for a while, I felt this flash of like annoyance. Like, why are you bothering me? I'm fine. I'm good. I'm handling things. I'm a grown man. And then after I hung up, I sat there and that was just someone caring about me. And I was really bothered that I felt that flash of annoyance. And then that's when I knew that I was in trouble. And that's when it hit me. The same way it hits Jack when he sees the photographs at the end. The same way it hits Wendy when she reads what he's actually been typing. The thing that I thought was protecting me was actually consuming me. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That's not a joke. That's a man who sat alone for so long that his mind just repeated itself in the madness. And when I read my own life against that page, I saw the same pattern, different words, but the same rhythm. The same excuse on repeat. I need space. I need time. I don't need anyone. I'll reach out tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes because tomorrow is isolation's best friend. Tomorrow is how it keeps you. So what did The Shining actually teach me about isolation? 2 things. They're simple, but as we know in life, simple and easy are never the same thing. First, isolation doesn't announce itself. It disguises itself as something you choose. I need space. I need to focus. I work better alone. Those things can be true, but they can also be the isolation talking. And the way to tell the difference is if someone's reaching out to you and it feels like an interruption instead of a relief, you're not taking space. You're being taken by it. Number two, the only way out the maze is backwards. You retrace your steps. You go back to the last place you feel connected. And the shining the maze represents isolation. So you call the person you stopped calling. You say the thing you've been swallowing. You don't push deeper into the isolation hoping it'll make sense eventually. It won't. The maze doesn't have a center. It only has an entrance. And that entrance is where people are. The shining helped me see that my isolation wasn't a situation I was in. It was a direction I was walking. And I could have turned around. That sounds simple. It is simple, but simple and easy, like I said, they're never the same thing. And turning around means admitting you walked the wrong way. It means showing up after you've been absent. It means saying, I isolated and it wasn't because I needed to, it was because I was afraid. And that's very hard. But it's less hard than freezing to death in a maze because you were too proud to ask for help. Maybe naming that fear is the first step we need to take to stop it from owning us. And for me, the name I had to give it was simple. I was afraid that if people saw how much I was struggling, they'd see me differently. And maybe they would have. But the alternative, which is disappearing so no one could see me at all, that was even worse. Jack didn't lose his mind because of the overlook. He lost it because he isolated himself from the only people who could have saved him. Wendy and Danny were right there the entire time. They were trying, and he chose the maze over them every single time. That's the tragedy, not the horror, the tragedy. The exit was always there. He just refused to take it. The maze is the isolation, and the way out is always the same. You turn around and you walk back towards the people you walked away from. Not because it's easy, because it's the only way. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.